Good morning, sir. I am Mercy Henyola, and I am going to report my final report on mythology and folklore about the urban legends in the Philippines. So, shall we start? Um, in October 2018, Robinson's Galleria launched a new digital campaign featuring actress Alice Dixon and an effort to advertise the mall's recently renovated interiors. In the ad, Dixon can be seen browsing through racks of clothing and walking into the fitting room to try them on, but she feels as though she is being watched. A humanoid snake reveals itself, but it's actually just a child in a costume. In a little over a month, the campaign has reached 2.3 million views and tens of thousands of likes, comments, and shares on Facebook. If part of this story seems familiar to you, you're not alone. The campaign makes a reference to decades-old urban legend which claim that the mall was a secret hideaway for Robinson, supposed mutant son of John Gokongwei and twin brother of Rubina Gokongwei P. According to the legend, Robinson hid out in a department store fitting rooms to prey on suspecting young women, and certain versions state that he had attacked or perhaps fallen in love with Dixon and herself. Celebrities tend to be common elements of urban legends. After all, there's Richard Kere's Kerbal incident and Lady Gaga's secret life as a hermaphrodite. Urban legends are part of a broader concept that is folklore. That was said by Professor Carlos Pitatel Jr., anthropologist and coordinator of the Folklore Studies program in the University of the Philippines. Folklore has two root words, which is folk, which corresponds to people, and lore, which corresponds to stories and narratives. Put them together, that's what we call the folklore. That I'll explain, and it means narrative or things about a group of people. Operationalize, he adds, the concept boils down to a knowledge of people, what they do, their daily lives, their ideas, their habits, behaviors, rituals, even what's on their mind. All of make up the school or thought called Kaalamang Bayan. So, we Filipino always tend to make stories. Just like for example, you heard you've heard a random chismis, which is there's no root of if it's true or not. So you're going to have it share it orally or making it more emphasizing to other people so that they will believe you, or making such stories that might bring up some lessons or no. Collective consciousness and creating culture. Specifically, urban legends are parts of Kaalamang Bayan that are rooted in urban areas and cities. The thing about urban legends is that they prove that folklore is not relegated to the rural area. Tatil says folklore is common everywhere, whether it is rural or urban, regarding of the dichotomy of city and province. The legends counter or disprove the idea that there is a divide between rural and urban sensibilities. Instead, Tatal explains that there's one continuous general consciousness of the people, which is when they heard some stories about like that and like that, is most of us peoples or Filipinos quickly believe on stories that there is no evidence, which is if it's true or not. So we, the listeners, tend to do us orally share it to other people. More often than not, by the time we hear an urban legend, because of the speed at which it spreads and its wide reach, it will have become difficult to point out exactly where it came from and how it started. It gets told over and over and repeated as though an object in a game of telephone or past the message and details are blurred and changed, resulting in different versions. So, kita nga mga Filipinos, we always tend to add words or tell the stories more in other versions. People will talk about it and some will remember what happened and they will pass it from one generation to another hanggang sa maging part of the collective consciousness. Tattoo explains this there is no difference from other forms of culture. Now you don't know when, where it started. Pero people just do it. In time, it becomes part of the culture. This, he adds, makes urban legends a factor of culture making. So without urban legends, I think, dili ta chismosaron or dili ta how mohimong storya. Because it's become part of our culture na mag-share og stories even if wala ka kaibaw if it's true or not or nahitabo ba jud to or na ba instances na the words that been taken or said orally by other people is true and not true. So the concept of a city is fairly recent, having existed with the past 200 years or so. Urban legends then are fairly modern examples of folklore. Tato says the common factors include popular culture, media, capitalist buildings and transportations, and especially crimes. Other elements that occur in or are associated with a city. A friend of a friend may have been injected with a syringe along recto only to find a note that said, "Welcome to the HIV world." Your mother may have told you about Agapito Flores, the Filipino man who supposedly invented fluorescent lights. You may have found yourself on a Ability Drive just waiting to catch a glimpse of a white lady in a review. So that's what we called sayings or panakot or kaalamang bayan na all today in our generation are still up and always naisulti sa atong mga old parents and grandmothers. So let's talk about the making of a myth. The Robinson's Caleria, if you know this story, is a story became mythical hearsay precisely because it is set in a mall, which has become a familiar part of life, if not a way of life, in Filipino municipalities. Tatel and Dax Carney, creative director of advertising agency Eco Channels, which produced the Dixon campaign, are both familiar with the urban legend, and each had his own recollection of having heard. Tuttle, who was in high school at that time, attributes in beginnings to good old-fashioned commercial rivalry. You can say that it's just a way to undermine the success of Robinson's with the other malls, kasi may competition, and it caught on in a way Robinson's and caught on in this tactics seemed to have worked for Kamai, who was in elementary school when he heard it, and she remembers that people would even got cholera because we were scared it was actually true. Another urban legend that appears to have been brought about attempts to ruin a business is the rumor that Chinese food, specifically xiaopao, contains cat meat. The success of Mammon Look, one of the country's pioneering modern Chinese restaurants, became a catalyst for others to open restaurants of their own. So, that rumor is wala na proof na it's true na in Robinson's Galleria is young women are mawala, and inside the dressing room kay nadayad to murag langob na if a young girl is going to enter that dressing room to feed, then there will be a big hole and then matagak siya dadto, which is under sa mall is there is a big snake. So that was, I thought, I remember about the Robinson's Galleria issue that's become a myth. And another urban legend, yung Chinese food xiaopao, yeah, its meat is coming from cat meat. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I think the xiaopao's meat is chicken or pork. So that's not make nonsense for me. So if you know the truth, or you'll search or ask some questions about it and not quickly kanang motoo or quickly believe in them, so you will know the truth na siopaw is not cat meat. So Evan Man D, who leads walking tours of Binondo Manila's food culture called the Big Binondo Food Walk, told Pepper the PH that the show meow myth may have come from near efforts to bring Momon Look down. Nolan House, which is also rose in popularity in the 90s, suffered from similar hearsay. In the same article, the Philippine Food and Drug Administration confirmed that inspections were conducted at the Chinese restaurant and no traces of cat meat were ever found, which is true. Part of the reasoning behind the persistence of this rumor is the stereotype that Chinese immigrants are cheap and would prefer to slaughter stray cats than spend on real meat. Fact-checking website Snopes states that the cat meat urban legend had been found to have been around since the earliest years of the British Empire in England and to the 1850s in the United States, and even then it was arguably rooted in racist and xenophobic notions perpetuated by the different cultures between China and other countries. So it was all about racism and xenophobic notions. So next, as a historical figure, Jose Rizal is also the subject of a few strange myths. One such story supposes that he may have been the biological father of Adolf Hitler, following a one-night tryst in Germany or Austria. However, accounts of Rizal's travels across Europe prove this false, and he was in London and in France at the time of Hitler's conception at birth between 1888 and 1889. Rizal's time in London is tied to an even more interesting possibility that he was notorious serial killer Jack the Ripper, who struck fear and panic in the city when he was staying there. An historian, Ambet Ocampo book Looking Back 5, Rizal's Teeth, Bonifacius Bones, he writes about these legends, noting that Rizal made a passing reference to Jack the Ripper in an essay to the Guardia Civil of La Solidaridad. Theorists reasoned that Rizal was roughly the same height by 5'7", had a mustache, was around the same age, and even had the same initials. Jack the Ripper killed victims with surgical precision, giving investigators the impressions that the menace may have been a doctor. And Rizal was a doctor as well. Most interesting is the fact that the killings are believed to have ceased at the same time as Rizal's death in London. So for me, it's kind of a bit interesting story because karon lang nako siya nahibawan na if Rizal and Jack the Ripper is the same person. So for me, it is not the same person. Siguro because Mr. Rizal is in a story, or which other side of the story I knew is struggling from the other country and always nag-uban sa iyang mga friends adto. So I don't think na siya is the same person with Jack the Ripper. So that was lore means narratives and stories in a time of social media. Perhaps one of the most well-known local urban legends in the Philippines is that of the above-mentioned White Lady on Balete Drive, which dates back to at least in 1950s. A story published in a newspaper in the mid-2000s purports that the myth was fabricated by a reporter in the 50s to make for an interesting story, combining multiple accounts. This reporter may have been Neil H. Cruz, who wrote in the Philippine Inquirer about his experience investigating Balete Drive. A friend of the White Lady shared that she was actually a victim of hit and run, a lost soul looking for revenge. He also interviewed a police captain who said he picked up a hitchhiking woman wearing all white, only to find that she had disappeared into thin air at the end of the street. The police captain's story has become a common iteration of the urban legend. Only today, it's most attributed to taxi drivers on night shifts. In a modern spin, a Grab passenger attributed to taxi drivers, or in a modern spin, Grab passenger now claims that her driver was dropping off a passenger at Robinson's Magnolia, only for her to vanish once they passed Balete Drive. So that was one of examples of narrative stories that has passed or became famous because it was spread all over social media. So this story about the Balete Drive nga naay White Lady is I knew about it, and I think it's merely true because there were some people and fewer people now. They were passing through the Balete Drive and they can see that lady. So I think some of the urban legends are true and some are not. It can be said that it's now much easier for such stories to get out of hand. Case in point, you may have heard that religious group protested and demanded the cancellation of the Killers concert in Manila in 2013 because of their band name. But the truth of it was a satirical Facebook post meant only for a small group of people to see and laugh at. It was mostly inspired by the absurdity of actual protests that happened when Lady Gaga did a concert there, says Mark Arboleda, who wrote and posted the fake article. He had done it to poke fun and to point out what a ridiculous idea it was, but when his friends began commenting, he realized that they actually believed it. The entire time I really thought they would understand that it's a joke, but apparently not. The post reached nearly 3,000 shares overnight, and it was even picked up by news sites and other websites. So that story is not familiar with me. So Arboleda eventually used the event as a basis for his undergraduate thesis, which revolved around online audiences and satirical news. With social media, it's so much easier now to spread information, and that was true. But many people still lack the literacy needed to be able to distinguish satire from what's not. The motivation to read entire articles and etc. Being familiar with current news also helps, and the problem with the people who aren't aware of what's happening around them could easily be fooled by stories that are even just a tiny bit believable. So most of us Filipinos quickly believe on stories nga wala ta kabaw if it's true or not. So we merely believe if other people say like that, ganyan, ganyan siya, ganyan. So we easily judge, and even if um we still the story is between the two people, imong spread. So that's a big chaos. So, and as with most urban legends, details are constantly being blurred the more it passes on, especially online, where knee-jerk reactions have become normal part of the conversation. Sometimes people spread stories because they're interesting, not necessarily because they've been verified to be true. Ableda adds, in social media where likes and shares are currency, urban legends and fabricated stories will inevitably arise. So, in our generation, technology is rampant and social media are one of people's stress free. So, for me, all the information on the social media are both fake and true. So, narana sa tao if she will he or she will believe it or not. So for me, as have an etiquette, you should always find another source of information before believing a information. Okay, so making sense of the world. Total posits that if urban legends reveal anything about us and our customs, that we are indeed a very folkloric people. It's ingrained in our beliefs, our culture, and how we interact with the world around us. The folktales did not lead us when we supposedly became more modernized or urbanized. They are part of our lives. By nature is passed down orally, keeping the story alive and sustaining it by continuing to tell it. So that was urban legend begins by sharing it orally and passed down to generation. Urban legends aren't just stuff that we hear, they create a world that we don't necessarily see. Carney says they stick with us because we learn about that when we're kids trying to figure out the world. Eventually, we outgrow these beliefs, but he says that the wonder never really goes away. You choose to believe or hold on to it because it's more interesting. It makes our life interesting as people. So, according to Tatal, however, urban legends also have social relevance beyond giving us tales to tell around a campfire. Urban legends help you understand the nature of life, the nature of the people, of collective consciousness, because the urban setting helps you understand city norms and city life. He says they will help you understand society better. So that was all about my report, Urban Legends of the Philippines. Thank you.